Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight. Um, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. My name is Holly Grand, and I am going to be facilitating our webinar this evening. I just want to go over, like I said, a few reminders before we get started here. Your cameras, microphones, and chat are all going to be disabled during the webinar. If you have questions during the presentation, please use that Q&A feature. It's located on the bottom of your screen in the Zoom window. We will answer all questions at the end of the presentation, but you can put your questions in there at any point during the webinar. If you want to provide comment about the Mariculture site that we're talking about here today, you must email them to our Oyster Mariculture email address, which is oyster.mariculture@tpwd.texas.gov. That'll be shown on the screen a few times. We are not going to be taking comments through Zoom. You are going to also be receiving a follow-up email from Zoom tomorrow that has that contact information, that email address where you can provide your comment or ask additional questions. And there will also be a link to our Texas Parks and Wildlife Department Education YouTube channel where you will be able to view a recording of this webinar. And there should also be a link in there that goes to our Oyster Mariculture page on the Parks and Wildlife site as well. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to our presenter for this evening, Zach.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, Holly, can you see my presentation screen?
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks y'all for tuning in tonight. My name is Zach Olson. I'm the Aransas Bay Ecosystem Leader for Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And tonight we're going to be talking about a proposed cultivated oyster mariculture grow-out facility in Copano Bay. The formal listing of that site is G-0015, just refers to the total number of completed permits that we have coast-wide currently. So before we really jump into the specifics of that site, I know many of you all on the call have set in on several of these public hearings in the past, but just a quick order of operations for tonight. Going to start with some information on the proposed mariculture site. Before that, we're going to get into some specifics of the mariculture program, just to give you some background in that. Like Holly said, we're going to take some time to answer any questions that folks have regarding this specific site or the program in general. You can submit your questions through that QA feature through Zoom. And then lastly, going to give some more detailed instructions on how to submit public comment. So real quickly, just some background about the cultivated oyster mariculture program in general. So TPWD permits the activity of cultivated oyster mariculture, both grow out sites or farms and nursery hatchery facilities. The facility we're talking about tonight is a grow out site or farm. That means that facility could grow oysters to harvestable size. This is strictly off mariculture that we're talking about. And so I'll show some pictures here in a second, but these are essentially cages or other holding devices that hold stocked oysters for growth in the water column. So I think that's key. These are stocked oysters. These aren't oysters coming from the public reef or from wild reefs. These are strictly stocked and then harvested from those cages. Only eastern oyster, that's the native species of oyster, is allowed for mariculture in Texas, and that has to come from Texas broodstock. We have some pretty strict genetic and biosecurity protocols in place for that. The process for getting to a permitted site starts with applicants nominating their own sites. And then after a consult with Parks and Wildlife biologists and our program specialist, we require that those applicants conduct a natural resources survey to assure that there's no habitat impacts on those sites. And so we'll talk about that natural resources survey tonight specifically for this site. That permit, once it's awarded, has a 10-year term. Give you some idea of what those this gear can look like in the water. So kind of three examples here: floating cages and floating bags, kind of those two top pictures there. Those tend to be the more common gear types used in Texas by Texas growers, it seems like. The site tonight has proposed the use of floating bags kind of on the right side there. There's another system called an adjustable longline system, though we really haven't seen a lot of interest in that sort of system in Texas waters. Little more information about the program. There's an annual fee paid based on the size of the grow out or nursery hatchery site. And while Parks and Wildlife is the central agency in permitting these sites, we're not the only agency that holds authorizations surrounding oyster mariculture. So that includes agencies like the General Land Office, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, Army Corps of Engineers, and U.S. Coast Guard. And I'll reference some of these agencies throughout the presentation tonight. But ultimately, the applicants need to go and get different permits and authorizations from each of these organizations before all is said and done. We do have an active use criteria for all of our mariculture locations, and essentially that boils down to a minimum stocking criteria per acre per year on site. And because these oysters are not coming from wild reefs, we do allow for year-round harvest of those stocked oysters out of the cages, but we must comply, or growers must comply with all Texas Department of State Health Services regulations. And along those lines, just some quick background regarding the role of the Texas Department of State Health Services when it comes to water classification. So among several other things, the Texas Department of State Health Services is involved in sampling water bodies of Texas for various contaminants. And based on those samples, the Texas Department of State Health Services then classifies water bodies for the harvest of oysters or other molluscan shellfish. And that's based on some set federal guidance there. And so those various classifications for shellfish harvest is approved waters, conditionally approved waters, restricted waters, prohibited waters, and unclassified waters. And those different classifications just allow for the harvest of molluscan shellfish under certain conditions or not at all. And so based on those classifications, we only allow certain types of facilities under certain types of classifications. So to be clear, these water classifications don't have any impact on access or other sort of recreational activities in those waters. They strictly speak to the harvest of shellfish, though recreational shellfish harvesting does apply under them as well. Strictly has to do with human health issues. TPWD is not involved in water body classifications for human health. Texas Department of State Health Services has some great online resources if anybody is interested in learning more about that, and we've provided the website there. The waters we're going to be talking about tonight are TX32 Copano Bay, and that is approved waters for all shellfish harvest. So kind of digging now into the specifics of this particular site. This is an oyster grow-out facility. It's located, proposed to be located in Copano Bay. That's shellfish harvest area TX32, again, approved water. And the total acreage of the proposed site is 10 acres. On that kind of map, the upper right-hand portion of your screen, you see that red circle. That's kind of the proposed location. It's just outside of Mission Bay in Copano Bay. To be clear, in Copano Bay proper, not in Mission Bay. So Copano Bay, TX32. Kind of zooming in on that site, what you can see here is that black square is that proposed 10-acre site. And then the two rings you see around it, that kind of yellow ring is a 200-foot buffer. That white ring is a 500-foot buffer surrounding that site. And that's important because we have various requirements for habitat allowance and buffers within each of those sites. So we don't allow any seagrass habitat within or within 200 feet of the proposed site. And we don't allow any oyster habitat within or within 500 feet of the proposed site. So that's just kind of give you an idea of the size of those buffers and where those are located. We'll come back to the results from that natural resources survey toward the end of the presentation today. But in short, there was no seagrass or oyster habitat present within that 200 or 500 foot buffer, respectively. And then one more thing to point out there, 515 foot from shoreline is the location of that COM site. And being so close to shoreline, we do require the permission from the landowner, written permission from the landowner, which the applicant has acquired. Some more details on the proposed site. We do ask that the applicant provide the access routes or planned access routes for their site. So the primary access route for this site is a 7.3-mile run in a boat from that South Copano Causeway boat launch, kind of just there at the south side of the Copano Causeway. Alternative access site is that boat ramp located in Bayside, though to be clear, that's currently closed, that boat ramp, though we do expect it to be open in the near future. They also are approved for land access if needed from the landowner using a right-of-way, and so that's a possibility as well. Some specifics on the site. So as I mentioned earlier, the applicant has proposed the use of floating bags. These bags are about 39 inches by 19 inches by 6 inches, just to kind of give you an idea of the size of them. Maximum, so these are oriented in columns across the site, and I'll show you a schematic of that here in a second, but a maximum of 96 columns per site, and then a maximum of 1,520 floating bags per acre on that site. And to be clear, that's what we could call the maximum operations plan. So there may and likely not be that much gear on site, and it would likely take some time for the applicant to build up to that site. But that is the maximum operations plan for the site. The bags are attached to a centralized kind of anchor line or backbone line via heavy duty storm clips. And then each of these columns that has several cages attached to them is anchored at each end by a helix anchor with buoys at each anchor point, and then polypropylene anchor line being used. U.S. Coast Guard has final authority on all navigational markings of anything like this in the water. And so the applicant will ultimately consult with the U.S. Coast Guard on that. But anything U.S. Coast Guard requires will likely be in addition to corner marker piles at the center points and with retrofitted reflective banding. And again, I'll show that on a schematic here on the next slide. And lastly, we ask that applicants have a plan for bird deterrence on site. In other words, to keep birds from landing on those cages. And the plan, if needed, that the applicant has proposed is a large zip ties, essentially on those cages, creating a spike system to keep the birds off. And then if needed, a bird away hawk system, which is essentially a kite system on site. This is a schematic of that 10-acre square site. So you can kind of see that each line of cages is oriented in a diagonal direction on site. So that blue dot on each end is the location of the anchor point. That overarching black square is the border of the site, and those yellow and yellow-black dots are corner navigational pilings and marker pilings. Proposed at minimum for the site, though, like we said, the U.S. Coast Guard will be consulted on any additional markings that are required for that area. Zooming in a little bit, like we said, the maximum design capacity is 1,520 floating bags per acre. And just to kind of give you an idea of the size of 1 acre, that kind of hashed square is 1 acre's worth of cages. If you're unfamiliar with what the orientation of these cages looks like, or these bags look like in the water column, what you're looking at here is a cross-sectional view. You can see kind of on each end, this is essentially 1 column of cages. On each end, there's a blue dot, which is the location of the anchor, and then the anchor line. These cages float in the water column with 2 orientations. You can kind of see those cages consist of the actual cage, which is the yellow portion there, and then a floating ballast, which allows those cages to float. The primary orientation is a feeding orientation, in which that ballast is floating on the top of the water and the cage is floating in the water column, allowing those oysters to feed. There is a drying or desiccation orientation where the bags are flipped above the floating ballast and allowed to dry. It's a key process in oyster mariculture. And then there's also this submerged position that you can kind of see all the way to the right side, in which you can actually fill those ballasts with water, allow those cages to sink. It's primarily used in the case of extreme weather to keep gear from being lost. Kind of continuing on with operations, the applicant has proposed to access the site at minimum weekly and tend that gear via boat or wading. It's a fairly shallow site, anywhere from 2 to 3.7 feet. The purpose of those site visits is to inspect gear for fouling and for maintenance of the gear. Gear will be taken to shore for any cleaning necessary, and when using that land base, when accessing from land, they'll use that right away from the property to the north. We also ask that all applicants provide a hurricane plan, and essentially this consists of a detailed checklist of routine maintenance during hurricane season, and then a list of how the applicant and staff will prepare for incoming hurricanes and what will be done under various situations. And so pre-season, that would consist of maintaining gear, preparing plans, and prepping staff. And then the in-season actual hurricane plan consists of a fairly common code yellow, code red model, in which code yellow essentially occurs when a hurricane enters the Gulf, and code red would would occur when there's a high probability of landfall for a tropical event or a hurricane. And the take home there is under code red, those bags would be either removed from the site completely or sunk, as we just saw in that previous schematic. Post hurricane, obviously assessment of damage, retrieving any lost gear, and redeployment of gear. And then lastly, just kind of going over this natural resources survey. Like I said at the beginning, not only do we assess the site with existing mapped habitat data and understanding of local use of the area, but we also require that the applicant conduct a natural resource survey on site, primarily to assess the presence of any seagrass or oyster habitat that we're trying to avoid impacts to. And I already spoke about those buffers, but again, we don't allow for any seagrass habitat within or within 200 foot of the proposed site, and any oyster habitat within or within 500 foot of the proposed site. So this natural resources survey was conducted by a side scan survey with extensive sediment grabs after the fact to ground truth that side scan sonar survey. It's conducted September of 2022 with additional sampling done in September of 2023. Again, depth range of that site ranges from 2 to 3.7 feet. The sediment was sandy, sand mud, or mud, and we detected no oyster habitat or seagrass habitat throughout that full site. So just kind of give you an idea of the number of samples collected on site. So not only was there a side scan survey conducted where depth would allow, but there was extensive sediment grabs conducted just to assure that there wasn't any habitat on site. And again, no seagrass or oyster habitat detected within the site and within the 200 or 500 foot buffers with regard to seagrass or oyster habitat, respectively. Okay. So the next steps then for this site would be, we're kind of in that public comment period right now. So the deadline for public comment is January 31st, 2024. And if you want to submit public comment, you would do so at that oyster.mariculture@tpwd.texas.gov website. Once we kind of move past this public comment, if we receive any public comments, we'll address those with the applicant. And if we move past that phase, a conditional permit would be issued. That does not allow the applicant to begin mariculture activity. Essentially, that just allows the applicant to then go secure authorizations from those other state and federal agencies. And then once they have all those additional authorizations, that final permit would be issued then, and mariculture activity can begin. And that is the end of our presentation today. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for any questions that anybody has. Again, if you have questions, please type them in that QA window. We'll try to address them. If you are wanting to give public comment, again, we're not taking public comment tonight via the Zoom interface, but please submit those public comments to that oyster.mariculture@tpw.texas.gov email address so that we can capture those in writing. So I'll go ahead and just kind of let anybody ask any questions via that QA window. If you want to do that, we'll give it a couple minutes. Okay, well, I'm not receiving any questions through the QA window. So thank you all for coming in tonight. If you have any questions or anything like that after the fact that you want to ask, you can also use that email address to to submit any questions, and we'll try to get those answered as well. But again, if you want to submit public comment, please do so using that email address. That said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Holly. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Just a reminder for those of you who maybe joined us a little bit late, you will be receiving an email from Zoom with some information about the webinar, a link to our YouTube channel where you'll be able to find a recording of this webinar along with the, additional resources like that email address where you can provide your comment or ask questions. And a link to the Mariculture site on the Parks and Wildlife website. So with that, I will go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you everyone so much for being here this evening. We appreciate it, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.